It was a staged war pretext no different than the sinking of the Lusitania, the provoking of Pearl Harbor, and the Gulf of Tonkin lie. In fact, if 9/11 wasn't a planned war pretext, it would be an exception to the rule. It has been used to launch 2 unprovoked illegal wars, one against Iraq and one against Afghanistan. However, 9/11 was a pretext for another war as well, the war against you. The Patriot Act, Homeland Security, the Military Tribunals Act, and other legislations are all completely and entirely designed to destroy your civil liberties and limit your ability to fight back against what is coming.
September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th,
September 11th, September 11th,
September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th,
September 11th,
September the 11th, September the 11th.
evil killers, Taliban, Al-Qaeda,
Osama bin Laden. War and danger. Weapons of mass destruction. Terror, terror, terror,
terror,
terrorism, 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 global terrorism, global terrorism, world terrorism, global terrorism, global terrorism, global terrorism, global terrorism, the terrorists, 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 terrorists,
terrorist, 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 terrorist,
terrorists, 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 the evil terrorists.
Terrorism. The words are hypnotically repeated. Terrorism, terrorist, terrorist threat, and of course, believed to be linked to Al-Qaeda. But it's the so-called war on terrorism that's in our faces practically 24/7 as the inescapable focus of our existence.
One day, our grandchildren will look back on this time and ask, how was the war on terror won?
The entire U.S. ruling class, ruling elite, comes to see terrorism as the preferred means, indeed the only means, to provide social cohesion, to provide an enemy image for the society to keep it together. According to neocon theory from Carl Schmitt, you have to have an enemy image in order to have a society. It's a very dangerous thing because now it means that the entire social order, the political parties, intellectual life, politics in general, all based on a monstrous myth. Monstrous myth.
So there was no network?
No.
No.
Probably not.
We invented it.
Invention's too strong a term. I think we projected it. We projected our own worst fears, and that what we see is a fantasy that's being created.
Al-Qaeda is a global network with global reach.
to target a deadly web of terror.
The idea, which is critical to the FBI's prosecution, that bin Laden ran a coherent organisation with operatives and cells all around the world, of which you could be a member, is a myth. There is no Al-Qaeda organisation. There is no international network with a leader, with cadres who will unquestioningly obey orders, with tentacles that stretch out to sleeper cells in America, in Africa, in Europe. That idea of a coherent, structured terrorist network with an organised capability simply does not exist.
And there are several key mind manipulation techniques which are very, very powerful propaganda tools. The most effective and the most powerful, and it's used on us all the time, is something I call problem, reaction, solution. It's a cracker, this one. It's a mind manipulation technique that avoids not only opposition to what is the goal of the manipulators, it actually manipulates people to demand they do what they want to do anyway. And it's happening all the time. Once you see this technique and how it works, you watch the news and read the newspapers in a completely different light because you start to see it happening. It works like this. You start by secretly creating a problem in the world and making sure someone else is blamed for it in the public arena, in the public mind. It could be a run on a currency, it could be a government collapse. At its most extreme, it could be a war, because the 2 world wars in this century were funded, all sides were funded by the same people. Provable. The same people that funded the Allies in the Second World War and funded the Soviet Union also funded Hitler. Why would they do that? Why would someone want to fund all sides in a war? What is good is a war? Well, first of all, on one level, it makes vast amounts of money if you're lending money to all sides and you're also selling them lots of arms and all that stuff. But the fundamental reason for a war is to change the nature of post-war society. And what we saw in the First World War and the Second World War were massive global examples of problem-reaction-solution, which work like this. The problem's created secretly. You then use the media, which isn't difficult, to wind up public opinion in relation to your manufactured problem to the point where public opinion utters the classic words, "Something must be done, this can't go on," which is always followed by, "Give my power away, what are they going to do about it?" And at that point, those who created the problem and got someone else to be blamed for it wound up that public reaction, then openly in the public arena, in the parliaments of the world, in the newspapers and on the television, offer the solutions to the problems they have created. And in doing so, they get vast numbers of people to demand what they want to do anyway. For instance, if you want more cameras in the streets, crikey, they're going up all over the place in Britain. If you want more cameras in the streets, you want a more armed police force, you want more authoritarian laws, greater erosions of freedom, and you want the public to demand you do it, then get the public frightened of crime. Either let society break down so there is more crime, or emphasize crime to be worse than it really is in some areas. Get people frightened, and the first thing people do when they're in fear about something is they look for someone out there to protect them from what they're frightened of. So, get people frightened that they're going to be burgled, get people frightened they're going to be mugged in the street, and they'll demand you take the freedoms away. They'll demand cameras in the streets and more authoritarian laws.
Yeah, there is a war on freedom. And we're being told over and over and over again that we need to support George Bush and we have to support the war in Iraq and we have to support this war on terror and we have to support all these laws that are coming by because, of course, they're all here to protect us. And yet when you look at things like the Patriot Act, this allows the FBI or any law enforcement agency to utilize what they call sneak and peek. They can go into your house when you're not home, and they can go through all of your stuff and without your ever knowing about it. How is this protecting your rights? That's just one example where we get to think we're free. You know, on the patriotic holidays, we all break out our flags and we wave them around and we sing patriotic songs like "I'm proud to be American," where I get to think I'm free.
We have a program known as Echelon, where they listen to every telephone call, every email, record every fax here in the United States. And all of this is done by computers. All of these messages are kept indefinitely on computer disks. What the American people must understand is that the massive amounts of money we're spending on defense is not to protect America, but ultimately to be used to control the American population as we move from freedom to fascism.
Currently in the United States, unannounced to most brainwashed Americans, your home can be searched without a warrant, without you being home. You can in turn be arrested with no charges revealed to you, detained indefinitely with no access to a lawyer, and legally tortured, all under the suspicion that you might be a terrorist. If you need a painted picture of what is happening in this country, let's recognize how history repeats itself. In February 1933, Hitler staged a false flag attack, burning down his own German parliament building, the Reichstag, and blamed it on communist terrorists. Within the next few weeks, he passed the Enabling Act, which completely eradicated the German Constitution, destroying people's liberties. He then led a series of preemptive wars, all justified to the German people as necessary to maintaining homeland security. This is Aaron Russo, a filmmaker and former politician. To his left is Nicholas Rockefeller of the infamous Rockefeller